Hello, everyone. So in this part of the video, I will talk about the context of global education in Saudi Arabia and Saudi education system. So here I'm going to share my screen. Here it goes. I will go full screen here. So the global education in Saudi context. First of all, in this topic, we have to remember that global education in Saudi Arabia has its origin closely tied with discovery of oil. Discovery of oil was yeah, we can say that was the most important part, or it was a turning point, the most important turning point in the history of Saudi Arabia. Oil exploration thrusted a desert Bedouin culture into a new economic burst and international limelight, bringing in Western investment, expertise, and products. So, along with that came other influences like higher living standards, urban lifestyles, educational reforms, and the need for multilingual communication other than Arabic. All these factors played an important role in bringing educational changes in Saudi Arabia. The next point, I would like to introduce a little bit history of how this change happened. So in November 1933, an oil exploration company known as California Arabian Standard Oil Company, or CASOC, was created. It was formed, and later it was known as Saudi Aramco. This company played an important role in discovery and exploration of oil and bringing all that industrial infrastructure to Saudi Arabia. As a result of that, as a result of all those efforts, in 1938, oil was discovered in Dammam, that is the eastern part of Saudi Arabia. Now, uh, so from that desert situation, it turned, it turned into this booming economy, as you can see in this picture. And here we need to discover something more, some more impact, or some more effects of this huge change that came to Saudi Arabia. So the economic growth necessitated new forms of technical competencies needed to operate the newly established institutions in health, education, science, and technology. So from 1930s to 80s, there was a total dependence on Western labor to run the Saudi factories. This heavy dependence subsequently impacted Saudi society in terms of language learning. First, English language in general, and secondly, English for specific purposes. So, communicating in English gained a prestigious status among Saudi citizens due to the fact that English was the vehicle to drive and direct jobs in industrial fields in the country. It became, and still it remains, a belief in KSA that achieving a high level of competency in English is conceived to be a life changing opportunity and a vital skill to possess on the road to prosperity. So, this awareness about learning a second language actually, you can say that, necessitated another need of developing education on the lines of national curriculum. However, this newfound economic prosperity also resulted into a negative social behavior, which originated from depending heavily on cheap imported labor. The sudden increase in demand for technical, academic, and professional expertise forced the government institutes to find short-term and easier solutions. As a result, workforce in their hundreds and thousands was imported from the West, Southeast Asia, and other countries of the Arab world. This prevented establishing long-term goals of developing core professional skills in the local population. A range of socioeconomic benefits of the global oil sales were transferred down to the local population without asking much in return. So it resulted into stipends, bonuses, or even free money, just to attract local students to universities and other educational institutes. This this phenomena of depending heavily on foreign labor and then not making long-term policies. It actually delayed a number of policy matters on education, vocational training, and developing national pool of core skills. So here we need to come down to what happened with global education issues in Saudi Arabia as a result of this sudden boom in economy and other aspects of economic life. So here we have to have a quick look on the issues of global education in curriculum, and then what were the most important issues of international or global education which were absent in Saudi curriculum. First of all, most of the education in the early years, where I'm talking about from like 1970s till 1990s, there were few aspects of global education or global awareness of global issues which were missing, which were mentioned in the curriculum, but they were not practiced inside the classroom. So first of all, let's talk about global thinking. The principle of accepting and respecting the opinions of others, the values of human rights, including the promise of democracy, the values of peace and tolerance, as well as the absence of multiculturalism and the focus on ideas of us and them. These were missing. These were present in curriculum, but they were not practiced inside the classroom. Along with that, some concepts of international understanding and other global problems, they were also mentioned in the curriculum, school curriculum, but they were not practiced inside the classroom. Now, the National Social Studies curriculum included these aspects like the concepts about nationality, the concepts about citizenship, international problems, sustainability, international understanding, the values of peace, disarmament, multiculturalism, focusing on the ideas of us and them, and accepting the principles of respect for others' opinion. So keeping in mind the ideal development of a student's mind towards global issues, understanding of global issues, and putting students' ideas in that context, all these ideas were added into the syllabus, into the curriculum and syllabi, but unfortunately, these ideas were not practiced inside the classroom. So on the other side, when we look at what were the points that were lacking in practice, first of all, we see scarcity of global thinking and a sense of belonging internationally. It was not practiced inside the classroom. There were certain reasons for that. We will discuss them in our next slide. Here we are just looking at those points which lacked in students' understanding because they were not taught or they were not practiced properly or they were not given enough time within the classroom. Second point is about scarcity of values of international education or international understanding. Despite that, it contains international education issues. However, at the same time, it contained issues against international education, such as the absence of discussion of multiculturalism and racism, focusing on the ideas of us and others. So the classrooms did not allow, or the teaching methodologies did not allow these kind of discussions in the classroom. There were other sociocultural aspects which were a hurdle in that discussion, or having that open environment of that discussion, which we will have a quick look in our next slide. The next point is about the absence of the values of peace. The absence of practicing or discussions about the principles of acceptance of others and respect for conscience. The last point here is the absence of providing solutions to global problems such as overpopulation and pollution. So these were the issues which were missing in textbooks sometimes. And even when these were available in the textbooks from primary to secondary education, they were not discussed. They were not properly taught. And here are some reasons. for global educations being absent or not being taught in Saudi school curriculum. First of all, Saudi Arabia's education system is relatively new when we compare it with the other education systems of the world. So, like the first public university was opened in 1957. That is hardly like, uh, it's not a long time. And the girls' education was allowed very late, towards the late 70s. So with these issues, with these kind of developments or very slow and gradual kind of developments in education system, we can understand why these global issues were not discussed in the class. Now, the same curriculum is implemented even today for all students from primary to high schools, and students do not have any choice. The curriculum does not offer any electives, so students cannot choose because they don't have any options. Generally, the instructor inside the classroom is an authoritative figure and is the presenter of the information. Classes are usually teacher-centered, not student-centered, and each step of learning is guided by the teacher. What does it mean? It means that the whole environment, learning process, assessment depends on the teacher. If the teacher is aware of all kinds of issues to bring into the classroom or to be discussed in the classroom for the mental development or the whole personality development of the student, the teacher will do that. If a teacher is not trained about these aspects, he or she will ignore these points. And on the receiving end, students will never get all these kind of information or grooming or ideas or mental development opportunities. Our next point is about the Arab students. The Arab student is not accustomed to working in groups and is quite dependent upon the instructor. So the group work is not the part of the classroom culture. There is not much emphasis on independent problem solving and individual creativity because the whole setup is teacher-centered. Now, the last point, within the school setting, student-teacher relationships in the Arab world are very, very formal, inside and outside the classroom. Students are generally hesitant to ask questions, and they regard the teacher with respect and many times with fear. So Arab instructors tend to express their authority and their approval or disapproval quite openly to the students. It doesn't allow much room for discussions, disagreements, you can say arguments or counter arguments. Here are some more points to be considered to understand properly why global education is not the part of a Saudi classroom. School students are not accustomed to receiving a syllabus, schedule, and objectives in their classes. Schools do not provide these things to students, or when these things are not provided, students are not aware that what is there in the syllabus which they have to learn and what it is not there. So they are not aware of it. They do not talk about that. Maybe their parents are also unaware of that. So it leaves a very little room for students to know anything important about these global issues. Okay. Moreover, the classes in the Arab world are usually for the same gender. This means that accordingly, male students have little or no experience being taught by female teachers. Though things are changing these days in this regard, with more openness is now being allowed at the higher education, but still in schools, there's complete segregation between males and female sections of the schools. So male students have they have a very little interaction with female teachers, and female teachers have very little interactions with male students. So gender-based problems or issues are not discussed, or they have in the school setting, students do not have any time or opportunity to look at the other side of the story. Within co-ed situation, co-education situation, sometimes it's hard to discuss gender-based issues. Like a few years back, even it was hard to talk about women driving when women were not allowed to drive. So now women can drive, women are working, they can start their business, they can own they can have their jobs or something like that. But 5 or 6 years back, the situation was not like that. Now, we also need to consider environment of this country. So the harsh and uncompromising desert landscape that characterizes the kingdom means that through the centuries, survival was largely dependent on family allegiances, connections, family connections, and close alliances with few trusted people, few trusted relatives, associates, tribal links like that. What was the impact of that? The impact was that the learning environment, which requires open discussions or controversial matters, was never done outside a very closed circle. So the impact of this thing moves from generation to generation. And now we see that when a teacher wants to discuss something which can generate a debate, it's sometimes very hard to convince students to talk about that, to discuss it openly inside the classrooms. So these are some of the issues which I wanted to bring up in the context of Saudi education system with its links to global education, global problems, global issues, and global education. Thank you so much. In the next part, I will explain my own practices, how I brought up global issues in my own teaching practice. Thank you so much.